This Bike Stick video is brought to you by Dry Rider, innovative motorcycle clothing since 1980, and SC Project, advanced exhaust technology. Recently got the chance to ride the BMW S1000XR, and it's a very cool piece of machinery. In this video we simply grabbed the bike, we took it for a run in the back blocks of a local city, and in it we're having a look at the functions and features, the things we liked about the bike in particular, and trying to provide information to more suit the needs of someone who's thinking about buying one. What this is not is a performance review or a comparison with other motorcycles. Now, if you're interested in buying one of these, it's useful to understand that it sits somewhere in between the S1000RR and the R1200GS. It shares a similar four-cylinder 1000cc motor that we see in the RR, albeit with significantly less horsepower. But it's more of the style of the GS from a rider's perspective, in that it's upright, it has a fairing, and has the wide handlebars. And as you'll see in the video, it's a very cool piece of machinery, and I'd love to have one sitting in here in my little stable. Now, before you write any complaints in here or make mention of it, I know I don't have a jacket on or gloves on. We had short notice and we had an opportunity to take the bike for a ride, so I took it. So ignore that, enjoy the video. This time we're on the BMW S1000XR. It's a 999cc four-cylinder sports adventure type bike that has the same engine and a lot of the carryover parts from the S1000R naked style bike from BMW. The first thing you notice of this particular bike is, first of all, the ergonomics of it, how comfortable it is. And I got to say, it's got a really comfortable seat, quite firm, that typical upright style of seating that I find it very, very comfortable. And one of the things that I noticed straight away is that it's got the wide handlebar, much like the R1200GS. And I kind of like that, so great for control, a little bit wider than probably what you find on most naked style bikes. This particular bike is up-spec'd in that it's got a lot of options on it, so now we're simply enjoying the benefits of it having quick shift, so we can change gears now without touching the clutch, and it's nice and smooth from from the whole range from first through to sixth in the gear changes, particularly when you let the engine rev a little bit. This particular bike has got the quick shift, or gear shift assist pro as they call it, which allows quick shifting upwards and downwards. So if I simply push on the gear lever, just get past this car, push on the gear lever, I'm changing down, I'm in third, now I can accelerate, and then it'll change into fourth, fifth, sixth, okay, quite easily. What else about this bike? First of all, on the left hand side you'll notice this one's got part of the travel packet's got the GPS fittings set up, so it's got the connection or mounting kit up on the front of the dash, but also the jog wheel on the left hand side, which allows you to scroll through the GPS and move through the different functions. The bike's also got a number of controls on the left hand side: cruise control, the daytime riding light, hazard lights, allows you to play with the ABS and also the suspension settings, the dynamic settings here, trip information, indicators and horn as you would normally have. On the right hand side, what you've got is a lot simpler type controls. So these particular controls are the start and stop, which is connected to the starter motor. You've got the mode switch so that you can flip between the different modes, riding modes, and also heated grips. So the way the heated motor, the roads, heated grips, the way the modes work is quite simple. I can do this on the run. I can simply push on the mode button on the right hand side, and now it displays the different options I've got. I can go from rain to road to dynamic, and I flip to dynamic and then pull in the clutch. What it will do is, if I give it a couple of seconds, it'll now settle in dynamic, and what that's going to do is dynamically play with the damping settings in response to the different conditions on the road. In the road settings, and the damping settings are fixed. So slightly different, and pretty good from a handling perspective, because this bike handles brilliantly. It's a real wolf in sheep's clothing, and pretty much underestimated by a lot of people because we don't see a lot of these around. The engine itself is very similar to what you find with all of the 4-cylinder S-Series BMW bikes, in that they're fairly high revving, so they respond better to you know, being up in the rev range. And this particular motor, which has 160 horsepower, it generates its maximum torque of 112 Newton meters at just over 9,000 RPM. So if you put that in context, a big V-twin like the one we rode just earlier today, it generates its maximum torque at about 4,000 RPM, whereas this one is much higher in the rev range. And you'll see on the dash it red lines at about 11 grand. When we get onto the RR, it's where the engine is slightly different in that it revs much higher and the power curve is in the higher rev range. So, but this particular one was built for rideability around town, not a racetrack. Yet it would be, you know, a blast to ride around a track flat out. So, yeah, rideability, the way it handles, very, very smooth, extremely comfortable. The bike feels super comfortable now as I'm just rolling through these turns and counter steering through the roundabout, and it just responds beautifully to the rider inputs. I love the bike. What I particularly like about this bike are the incredible brakes. Okay, if I slam the brakes on, man, it pulls up super, super hard. It's got those Brembos, very similar to what we see on the RR, which has got the best brakes I've ever felt in my entire life. Very smooth to ride, easy to, you know, maneuver and handle, and you've got a bunch of options about the ride height setting. So this particular one, you can change the height of the bike through the dynamic electronic suspension adjustment by adjusting the preload at the rear end, and that preload can be set up for single rider, rider plus luggage, or 2 riders. And I kind of like riding the bike a little bit firmer with the rider plus luggage setting, even though I'm riding by myself. Other things about the bike, you'll notice that it's got a very vertical screen here that is adjustable up and down, but the interesting part about it, it's quite vertical compared to a lot of the other screens that I've seen, but at the moment what I'm feeling, it's hardly any wind on the helmet at all, even though it's in the lower setting. There's none of this pull on your chest which drags you forward, created by a vacuum that a lot of screens can create. I think the manufacturers have kind of got that design of the screens pretty much sorted these days, and this particular one's very comfortable sitting behind the screen, reasonably quiet in terms of the amount of air that's hitting the helmet. For a taller rider, they probably need to raise that screen up a little bit. One of the things you'll notice as you ride along, like this is probably the first response I hear from people riding these BMs, is that it feels like it's revving quite high, and that's pretty typical of the way these motors are designed. They're designed to rev fairly high, and they feel like they'll give you a sense of higher revs as you're sitting at 80 kilometers an hour or 100 kilometers an hour. And as I said, that's pretty typical of the BMW style bikes, but they got a lot of revs behind it that you can utilize to generate higher speeds, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way the bike is designed. One thing that BMW really have nailed has been the quality of the electronics on these bikes, and they kind of lead the market a little bit in terms of the different types of technology that they're introducing. Things such as ABS Pro, the dynamic traction control, the automatic stability control, dynamic electronic suspension adjustment, dynamic damping control, and that type of thing. What I particularly like about the electronics is they work, and it's as simple as that. There's less of a problem with these. They seem to have perfected them and made them a lot simpler than a lot of manufacturers, particularly other European manufacturers. And what's really important about it is the intervention from a lot of these things, like the dynamic traction control and that type of thing, is less in your face now than it used to be with BMW, and much more effective in terms of just doing the job silently in the background. And it's something that will continue to evolve to the point where we won't even notice their intervention, and it makes for a much safer motorcycling world when motorbikes are in the hands of people who don't have the experience. So my general impressions of the bike are these. First of all, the quick shift up and down works brilliantly. It's not quite as smooth as the RR, which has had a lot more years in development in the upshifting compartment, but the downshifting is brilliant, works fantastic. And once you get used to this quick shift up and down, you'll start to make a mistake on other people's bikes because you'll forget to use the clutch. The overall ergonomics of the bike, it's extremely comfortable, very rideable in a multifunctional role. So to and from work, it's a great piece of kit. And it also does well in terms of going for a tour on the weekend or a scoot up and down the range with the boys. And I think it'll surprise a lot of people in terms of its handling and power. The brakes on this bike are absolutely superb, a carryover from the S1000XR and R series bikes. The overall finish is typical of German engineering, brilliant in terms of nuts and bolts and the finish. Everything fits together very well and is very well made. The way the bracket works here for the GPS, very secure and very solid. And it's typical, as I said, of the BMW Motorrad construction process. An issue that I've had in previous bikes, BMWs particularly, has been the sticking of switches or issues with these switches in the tropics where there's a bit of corrosion around. And we've been able to fix that, particularly on the BMW, with a little bit of silicone spray, which seems to put off that effect that we get, or the corrosion effect we get in hot climates and wet and moist climates like we have in the tropics up here. Overall, look, I particularly love this bike. I think it's a great bit of kit. I think it's something that hasn't caught on as much as it should have by now, because people are kind of caught in between, do I get a sports bike or do I go and get the R1200 GS? But this bike kind of sits squarely in the middle, is a direct competitor with the Ducati 1200 Multistrada, and it well and truly has earned its place and the accolades that it gets in terms of performance and functionality. And I'd highly recommend this bike to anyone.